we are coming into a time now where like nobody can predict the future anymore. Maybe we can see the first order, second order consequences, but what about the third, fourth, fifth? Even within months from now, the whole future is like this big black hole of the unknown. When the future is no longer predictable, it becomes formless, and this formlessness represents infinite possibility.
When you told me about it, usually I have to tap into a meditative state to see the field. But this immediately generated some visuals where there was like a row of infant doors on the right-hand side, and then coming in from the left was just like fractal patterns of rainbows.
There is an actual frequency of this field of possibilities that the intention is through this podcast that we are making this field available. Every day when you wake up, you're standing in front of a doorway, a threshold between who you've been and who you're becoming. This is the door of possibility. This is the first episode of Doors of Possibility, and I kind of came up with a little subtitle for this first episode, which is The Agreement to the New, and we'll get into what that means in a moment. Before we get into it, just a little about me and my co-host Megan. For those of you who don't know us, I am a clinical hypnotist and a psycho-spiritual healer and a teacher of manifestation. And before that, I was a direct response copywriting and marketing consultant for about 13 years. And now, well, this coaching and healing work is what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years or so. One thing I do want to mention is that somewhere along the way of me kind of doing sessions with people, my third eye started vibrating, which seems to have given me the ability to sense and perceive vibrational fields. So I can kind of feel that physically, whereas Megan here, my co-host, she has her own superpower where she can actually see vibrational fields. And I'm mentioning that because all that very much has to do with how this podcast came about. About, I think it was like 3 weeks ago, maybe. I was on my way back home. It's like middle of the night. I was sitting on the back of a motorbike, and this name just popped in my head, Doors of Possibility. And my immediate thought was like, hey, that would be a pretty good name for a podcast. And I got home and I was meeting up with Megan that night, and I told her about it. And pretty much immediately she could like see the vibrational field of that name. Or you could probably describe it better. Could you kind of tell us a little what you saw and experienced when you heard the name?
Yeah, so when you told me about it, like it immediately, usually I have to kind of tap into a meditative state to see the field. But this immediately generated some visuals for me where there was like a row of infant doors on the right-hand side, and then coming in from the left was just like fractal patterns of rainbows. Like if you've ever seen those CNY cubes, which is just a cube comprised of like the three primary colors, and they just kind of continue to blend and mix as you look through it at different
Yeah.
angles. It was kind of like that, like scattered throughout the entire thing. And then there were also um, visuals of this idea, but I think that those were representative of different beliefs where you have to where you have a belief that you need a specific key that's kind of like floating around, which was represented by like these different darker shaped orbs floating around in order to get through the doors. But they were like a red herring. They're not a necessity in order to get through the door. You can just walk through any of them. But
Mhm.
most people spend a long time trying to grab keys and never actually walking through the doors.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned there was this kind of loop thing that you saw.
Yeah.
What was that about?
I think it was more just like the spiral of I don't really know how to explain it.
I kind of felt like it had something to do with time, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know either. Uh, but all that to say, um, it kind of let me know that this wasn't just like a brain fart or something. That there's an actual vibrational field of possibilities that I've come to understand. It sort of exists as almost like a node in the human collective field that we can all tune to and tap into, where there are these essentially infinite possibilities that are available. There is an actual frequency of this field of possibilities that the intention is through this podcast that we are making this field available. That even just from listening to this podcast, you are not just listening to a podcast or just like absorbing information or whatever. It's like this frequency connection that is interactive with your vibrational field. And I don't know, depending on um, your familiarity or experience with these kinds of things, that either might sound totally like a normal thing, like of course it's like that, or it might seem like total hocus pocus. But either way, I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're listening. And my intention is actually that this isn't just going to be like an idea for you, but at the end of this, I will offer a claim, a frequency attunement, if you will, that will actually connect you to this field and make this experiential for you. So for those of you for whom this seemed like hocus pocus, it will be a little less hocus pocus and actually something quite tangible. Um, so um, I want to talk about this foundational idea of the door of possibility. Um, it's the first step to anything you want to create, anything you want to achieve in your life, any goal, any vision you have. It starts with conceiving of it as possible. Like you've never done anything in your life that you didn't believe was possible. And the moment that anything has initiated in your life was the moment when you first saw it as possible. Um, and that moment, I see it almost like a portal. It's like it's what opens up the potentials for anything being created, is first being able to see it as possible. There's this quote from Seth that just came to mind now. He says, mental images are incipient matter. It's like when you're first able to see something, like that is literally you're perceiving, because your perception is based on vibration. Even your physical senses are translators of vibration. They're tuned to ranges of frequency. So when you even just see something in your mind, that thought has a vibrational quality to it. And as that vibration increases in momentum, it reaches to a point um, where it sort of bursts through into the physical. So that spark of possibility is the first moment of creation. Um, and there's a series of doorways to go through from that first spark to the full manifestation of it. In fact, there are 9 doors that we have identified, which I think we'll get through all of those in future episodes. But Now, like every day when you wake up, you're standing in front of a doorway. There is this threshold between who you've been and who you're becoming. And that very first door is the door of possibility. I think also I want to say that the timing of this seems right to me. There is so much uncertainty right now, and everybody's like freaking out. Particularly with AI is such a big thing that's happening right now, and just how quickly that's developing. I mean, I'm seeing these like thumbnails in my YouTube feed talking about, you got to prepare now because like your job's going to be gone in 3 months. And it's like literally that's the like timing that we have in front of us right now. Is the future is so uncertain. Um, I heard somebody talking about the patent industry where it used to take like weeks and weeks and like all this insane amount of paperwork in order to file a patent. And it was this long drawn out process and you need all these people involved. And now AI can do it in like an hour. Um, so the first order consequence of AI in that industry, well, okay, it's a lot easier to file a patent, but because it's so much easier, now everybody can do it. So they were kind of explaining that, first people would think that, let's say Toyota, they would try to take all of their ideas and just try to file patents for them. But then they were saying it's actually likely that then they would also go after, like, take all of Honda's ideas and try to patent them so that Honda couldn't do it. Um, and then they were kind of explaining like first order, second order, third order consequences of this. And you basically end up at a place where patents just become entirely obsolete. And there will be no usefulness at all in filing a patent anymore. So and that's not just with patents, but that's with like everything. So none of us really know how that's going to unfold. We are coming into a time now in the human collective where like nobody can predict the future anymore. Maybe we can see the first order, second order consequences, but what about the third, fourth, fifth? And it's just like even within months from now, the whole future is like this big black hole of the unknown. And not just with AI, but what's going on with governments and I don't know, climate and uh, everything else that's happening, politics and so on and so forth. We're living in extremely uncertain times, and there's a lot of fear just like in the air. Um, and I would like to suggest that in all of that lies maybe the biggest opportunity that we've ever seen, because the unknown is not inherently scary. Is just the same reason that kids are scared of the dark. It's not because darkness is scary, but just because we can't see it. We can't see what's in it. So this black hole of the unknown of itself is not scary. It's just these images that we kind of project into it. And so what happens is that we use our expectation to try to predict the future in order that we can feel safe to move forward into the future. And this expectation is all based on history. It's all based on past memory. We try to predict what things are going to be like based on what things have been like. And this like turning point that we're in now is a point where that's no longer possible because of how quickly everything is changing. However, if we think about what I mentioned that Seth said, which is that mental images are incipient matter. He also says you create what you expect. That means when the future is no longer predictable, it becomes formless. And this formlessness just represents infinite possibility. So if you're listening to this, you kind of have that choice to make right now of like which side of that you want to be on. Like you can choose to buy to this like fear driven narrative, and you can let all those scary images be projected into the future as you think of it. Or you can realize that, well, everything comes in polarities, right? There's another side of that. Um, and that's essentially what this podcast represents. It's that infinite field of possibilities that opens up just because the future is so unknown at this current time. So, to the exact degree that the future is uncertain, is the exact degree that possibilities expand. Um, it's yeah, I'm thinking of this door of possibilities idea as it's like this almost like a vibrational corridor, and because we're all kind of jumping into this unknown now, um, this corridor is opening up for the human collective. And if you're listening again, that will be your choice to agree to that, to be willing to step into that. I'm seeing also like in my own life and in the one-on-one sessions I have every day with people, a lot of people are like going through it right now. It's like this incredible amount of like pressure that people are experiencing. Um, and the thought that keeps coming to mind is that it really feels like the whole universe is like positioning us. I feel like we're being positioned into it's like almost we're being put in a corner where there's nothing else we can do but surrender. Um, and if you've seen any of my other content or my master classes, you know I talk a lot about surrender. Um, Surrender being that mechanism that really unlocks so much, and it is really the gateway into stepping into that next version of yourself. Like if you're on this threshold between who you've been and who you're becoming, surrender is very much the gateway in between that, um, because the new always comes at the cost of the old. So as we're able to surrender the old is what allows us to step into the new. So, um, I have a bunch more, but Megan, is anything coming to mind as I'm babbling on about all of this? Any thoughts or ideas before we move further?
I think I'm just in agreement. Like I've seen all of these patterns as well in my own life and then also with my clients and the one-on-one sessions that I've been having.
Yeah,
So I I don't have a lot to add to it other than like, yeah, I've been seeing it and experiencing it a lot myself.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Um, so my my copywriter brain, as I was preparing for all of this, I'm always thinking I gotta back everything up with like proof or uh, some kind of validation. So I thought I would sort of break this down from a couple different angles. Just this, since we're on this topic of possibility. Um, if we look at neuroscience, there is a concept called the reticular activating system, or RAS, and this is essentially your it's your selective focus. Um, if you've ever, um, I remember my dad, his dream car was always like a Mini Cooper, and like his whole life he always wanted a Mini. And a couple of years ago, they were finally going to get one. And just when they were in that process of of like researching that and all of that, he just started seeing Mini Coopers everywhere. He was like, I can't believe there's, so many Mini Coopers in this like small town that they live in Sweden. And I I think pretty much everybody has had that experience. When you're or like my mom, she used to sell baby strollers, and it's like I think even to this day, when she walks around town, she just notices all the baby strollers, and she knows what brand it is, and like she knows all about them. So your selective focus is what your brain has determined is important, and it will just hone in on those things. It will focus on that. Your senses are bringing in like billions of bytes of data per second. So like you can't take it all in, right? So you need a mechanism to sort of organize that and prioritize all the data based on what's important to look at. So that's what the RAS is. I have here, it says it's a neural mechanism that filters incoming information. So when you believe that something is possible, the RAS will highlight opportunities aligned to that belief. Um, so the agreement to possibility literally rewires your brain in terms of what you automatically notice. I have another concept that I teach, which I like to say emotions are like rooms, and the walls of the rooms are made of beliefs. So your beliefs form your perceptual container. Like you cannot perceive outside of your own belief system. The beliefs kind of set the vibration, which generate the emotion, and the emotion becomes like the lens. So um, the metaphor I use is like it's like if you're wearing red sunglasses, everything looks red. So if somebody's in like they're really angry, it's not only that they just think angry thoughts, but it's they can only think angry thoughts from that state. You're not able to access a joyful thought or a curious thought or an excited thought from a state of anger, because that's the room that you're in at that time. So if somebody's believing that there are no possibilities available for them, well, then guess what? That's what their reality is going to reflect to them. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, before that, I just wanted to actually also note that that's so funny about the reticular activating system. I had somebody that I did a session with, and she had this belief that all men were unattracted to her. And
mhm,
so everywhere she went, she just found she thought every man was disrespectful. She had like a really negative lens on it. And so, of course, that seemed to continue to play itself out, which reinforced the belief, which reinforced her feeling stuck and trying to find love. Um, that shifted obviously, but it was
right.
just really interesting because that had been happening for years and she couldn't figure out what it was. And so
Mhm,
that was kind of cool. What I wanted to add as well was in psychology, the term is like the self-fulfilling prophecy.
mhm,
So anytime that you put any attention into one particular outcome or like a fixation towards a particular outcome happening, it oftentimes will manifest itself. And it doesn't have to always be a conscious fixation. It could be an unconscious fixation where you're thinking that like if you're scared of a possible outcome happening, then all the energy and attention is going towards that timeline. So then that shows itself up. It's
right,
like very similar. It's just the psychological version of a reticular activating system, I think.
right.
Yeah.
It's so funny you should mention that about dating. I mean, I hear that like every time I go out, like here in Bangkok, everybody's like complaining about dating, and probably not just in Bangkok, but probably like every city, I guess.
Really?
Um, yeah, I mean, so from
It's that classic thing, right? So from the women's side, you have, that all men are pigs, and they only want
Yeah.
one thing. And from the men's side, it's like, oh, women only care about money. They just want me for my money, and you gotta be rich and all of this stupid shit. But again, it's like every time you say that, you're confirming, affirming, reinforcing your reality as that.
Yeah.
You're just perpetuating your own beliefs, and that's going to keep being reflected to you in your experience. So if that's what you believe, and if your beliefs are the basis for your perception, then it's like no wonder. It's like not a big mystery why you keep experiencing that.
Mhm.
Um, so in behavioral science, there's I so just a disclaimer, I didn't know about this until today, but there's something called the trans-theoretical model of change, which shows that contemplation, which they're defining as awareness of potential change. So the awareness of a potential change is a prerequisite for any shift. Um, I'm noticing now, because my kind of sensitivity to vibrational fields has become so sensitive, just about every session I have, there's a moment in the session where we've like gone over, like, here's what somebody's been feeling stuck with, and I'll say, like, I understand how that's been for you, but as we look forward together, here's what I see. Like, as we look into the future, here's what I see for you. And I see you as this. I see you where, a similar thing happened that would have triggered you in the past, but now you're realizing, like, oh, like, that doesn't affect me at all. And something like that. And literally causing them to see themselves on the other side of the problem.
Mhm.
And like 9 out of 10 times, I see their faces light up. And now I even feel like literally a vibrational shift in the field just from them being able to see that possibility. 9 times out of 10, probably 99 times out of 100, um, if somebody's been feeling stuck on a problem, they haven't seen a possibility of like no longer having that problem because they keep thinking about the problem. Um, and I like to say that's kind of like, you're driving down the road, and you keep thinking, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree. That's like not the best way of getting to your destination. Um, I have a personal experience of that. I just remembered now when I was when I was learning to ride a bike. I was like 3 or 4 years old, and it's this like big open field, and there's one light pole, and wouldn't you know it, I just straight for the light pole. Um, so that's kind of how I find most people are going around thinking all the time. They're just looping on their problems. Um, don't hit the light pole. I mean,
That's actually how I crashed my car.
did
Like
you actually?
like when I first got my car, like maybe a year later, I was I got a few almost tickets. I got out of them because I talked my way out of them. But they were almost tickets because I kept like careening through corners as fast as possible, like 90-degree angles, just like turning left, like a psycho, just gunning it at like 70. And so I was like, I just kept getting the warning from all these cops. So like, you're going to hit your car. If not into another car, it's going to be a pedestrian. If it's not a pedestrian, it's going to, these are all like catastrophic for not just yourself, but for like other people, putting other people in harm's way. And so I had just almost gotten a ticket again. And I was like really, really scared about going too fast down a corner. And I was like driving and I was like, oh, I have to turn left right now. And I just hit I was like, I have to make sure I hit the brake to slow down, but instead I hit the gas because I was thinking so much about I have to hit the brake that I hit the wrong one. And I went flying down and I scraped the entire right side of my car along like this giant row of dumpsters. And then like my little ear mirror fell off, like the whole car was like caved in on the one side. Thankfully, I was like unharmed. And then I just started crying and bawling my eyes out while driving down. I was like, why did this happen to me? I don't know why. And it was just because I had been so fixated on not
Yeah.
doing it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So like how many times in your, let's say there's a bad habit and you just keep thinking, I better not do that again.
Yeah.
Or like whatever it is. That's one of the funny things about the mind is it really doesn't hear or understand the word don't or not. It's like, you know, if I tell you, I'll give you $1 million, all you have to do is not think about a squirrel playing the banjo. Don't think about it, you know, and it's like, oops, um, there it is. Um, okay, so they have this thing in quantum physics. They call it quantum superposition, and you might have heard about the double slit experiment and all of this, where they have figured out that conscious observation of something is what collapses the field. Um, so it's the idea that every possibility exists simultaneously. Um, and until that is observed, it is the consciousness of the observer that causes all of those possibilities to collapse into the thing that's being experienced. So your conscious attention selects from this field of possibilities, and kind of brings it down into the one thing. I watched a super interesting video about this recently, where they were explaining that um, well, they kind of started with the question of like when you look at the way light travels, they've observed that light always takes the most efficient path. And they were kind of using an example of, let's say you're standing on the beach and a little bit out into the water, like somebody's drowning, and let's say they're a bit out and like a bit to the left. So there are now, if you want to go save this person, there are all these different paths that you can take to get to them. Like either you can go straight in the water and like try to go through the water, but that would be a slower path because you have to go through the water. Or you could like run all the way up the beach till you're in front of them, and then from there go into the water, and then all the kind of midpoints. And they kind of identify that the most efficient path would be like you run a little bit this way and then you kind of go this way. And all these possible paths to take, right? And when they look at the way light travels, it always takes the most efficient path. But then they're like, how does the light know that? How does the light know where to go? And when they explored this further, what they realized was that actually the light takes all of the paths. It takes all of the paths at the same time. But it is our conscious observation that causes that field of potentials to collapse into the one thing that we are experiencing. Even gene expression. I mean, if we think about the placebo effect, how our beliefs about what's possible literally affect our biology. So this would be the field of epigenetics. So, I mean, if even your biology is shaped by your beliefs and your awareness, there's just so much possibility available in every area of your life. So finally, when we think about manifestation, the idea of manifestation is that every thought that you think has a vibrational frequency. And there are even devices we have now that can measure frequencies outside of somebody's head. So we have literal, like, scientific proof that there are waves of frequency being broadcast from our skulls. Your nervous system is essentially an antenna. And if we look at the science of how frequencies work, we know that frequencies seek harmony. So if you have a tuning fork that's vibrating at a certain frequency and you put it next to another tuning fork, the other tuning fork will also start vibrating. So this is the idea of co-resonance. And this idea of co-resonance would, through the lens of manifestation, is literally how you create everything in your life. It's how you draw every event, every experience, every person and thing to you. So this phrase from the guides, from the Paul Selig books, they say agreement is vibrational accord. So when you're in agreement to a possibility, that's a frequency that becomes active in your field. So when you enter into the agreement with the possibility of something new, and again, the subtitle for this podcast was The Agreement to the New. When you see something as possible, you begin to attune to the field, to that field of that, the reality of that thing. And that would be the very first act of creation. So the really obvious story that comes to mind, and you've probably all heard the story of Roger Bannister and the 4-minute mile. Literally for decades, it was kind of universally believed that the human body was physically incapable of running a mile in under 4 minutes. Doctors, physiologists, everybody was warning that even attempting to run a 4-minute mile could be fatal to the human body. But Roger Bannister did not agree with that. He saw a possibility where others saw limitation. And on May 6th, 1954, Roger Bannister ran a mile in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds. So first time in human history that somebody broke that barrier. 46 days later, another guy did it. His name was John Landy, and he ran a sub 4-minute mile in Finland. And I don't know the exact number, but I think like within the next year, there was like another 20 something people that also ran a 4-minute mile. A whole bunch of people basically that suddenly they could do it just because one guy did it. I'm thinking of it as like he literally opened up this vibrational corridor. He made that possibility available within the human collective field. And all of that because he was able to hold a belief, an agreement to a possibility that no one else had tuned to yet. And once that possibility was demonstrated, that limitation collapsed. And what was previously impossible now became available for everyone. And one of the very significant ones for me, I remember I was about 13 years old, and I think I like just started 7th grade or something. And it was like the time in your life when you start really thinking about, what am I going to do when I grow up? You're like starting to enter that in between phase between childhood and adulthood. So early teens. And I remember I read one of those like scammy like business opportunity sales letters online about, how to make $30,000 a month, sitting in your underwear, clicking a few buttons. And well, the whole thing turned out to be a pile of crap, basically, but um, it did open up that possibility for me. And it was like this huge light bulb moment, like, wait a minute, it's possible to make money on the internet. And if that's possible, and I'm just 13, I got time to figure this out. If that's possible, and if I figure it out, that means I never have to get a real job. That was literally my whole thought process that just set my life down this certain path. Um, that led me to internet marketing, that led me to copywriting, led me to dropping out of school when I was 16, um, led me to um, going to Thailand when I was 19. And that was like another very significant door that opened up for me. I'd been dreaming of traveling for years at that point. Like I always knew I wanted to move to another country, but it was still kind of conceptual. It was like still a dream at that point. But actually coming to Thailand is what made it real. Um, I remember during that trip in February 2014, it was in the middle of the riots that were going on at that time. So literally my first day in Thailand was um, like all the roads were blocked off. There were like thousands of people in the street, and I saw it was like somebody was there kind of explaining what happened to us. And it was basically the leader of this rebellion, essentially. Like the main guy was like on stage, and there was thousands of people, and there was all this like energy in the air. And so, yeah, that was like my first day in Thailand. And throughout that trip, it was just like I was on a different planet. I'm from this like small town in Sweden, and it's like all these possibilities are just opening up every day for me as I'm walking down the street. And one of my last days there, um, I remember I was like walking back to my hostel, and I had this thought, like, hey, if I really like work hard at this internet marketing stuff, then this doesn't have to be a vacation. Like this could be my life. And that was the moment that door opened, which led me to, a couple months later, or at the end of that year, rather, I came back for 3 months. It was my first experience of really like living here, and then went back to Sweden a couple months, and then I came back again, and this time I stayed for 9 months, and then went back a bit, and next time I got my work permit and all of that stuff. So, um, just about every major turning point in my life, I can trace back to one specific moment where a door of possibility was opened. Um, Even as far as all of this content that I'm creating and the ideas that I'm talking about. And I remember also very early, I was like reading this spiritual book, and the guy was kind of explaining how he navigates through his life. And this one passage just stuck with me where he said, I do what I feel like doing. And if something needs to be done, there will come a time when I feel like doing it. And if that time doesn't come, then it doesn't get done and it didn't need doing. Um, and it was like, I'd never heard anybody talking like that before. I didn't know that that was a possibility. I didn't know you could live that way. Um, a bit later, I got into Sedona message, and I started hearing these stories about Lester Levinson, who was the founder of Sedona message. And he had this very radical idea that he called the butt system, where he said, get everything you want by sitting on your butt and releasing only. So releasing, so he's talking about releasing emotions, essentially, which was what was taught through the Sedona method. And, I had experienced several moments in my life when I had released something and then the manifestation would happen. And you can literally think of that as the emotion is the vibrational essence of what's perpetuated the old reality. So when that is released, you make space for the new intention to become real. And I'd experienced that like to some level. So I knew it was real. And I started to understand that like this manifestation stuff, it's predictable. It follows a pattern. There's a mechanism to it. And if something works, then there's a way that it works. And if you can understand the way that it works, then you can start moving in alignment with that mechanism. Um, and but this was kind of like a very radical um, expansion to that, where he said, "Get everything you want by sitting on your butt and releasing only." And he told the story of he kind of just wanted to put this to the test, and he had decided he wanted to create like some wealth in his life. And I think within about a year, he had acquired like 70 or so luxury condos in Las Vegas. So he was sitting on this like multi-million dollar net worth in like his property portfolio with within like a year. And I wasn't sure if I believed that at first, but then actually a couple of years later, I heard there was a story from somebody. It was like a newspaper clipping of somebody who confirmed that story. He was like, "Yeah, that's true because I was one of the guys." Oh, I forgot to tell that part. So, sorry. So at the end of him acquiring all those properties, he basically realized, well, I can do this whatever I want. So he gave them all away. He gave away all of those condos. And then in this newspaper clipping, there was this guy who was basically, he was like, "Yep, I was one of the guys who got one of those condos just given to me from Lester." Um, Most recently, I would say, is this whole, I guess what you could call psychic abilities that have appeared in my life. And that just like hit me out of the blue. Um, and for those of you who have seen that, um, I just want to say that that's a surprising to me. That's probably more surprising to me than anybody. I remember when I started doing like Sedona method and all like these kind of somatic practices, I guess, like over a decade ago, I couldn't feel shit. Like I couldn't even feel my emotions. And I remember listening to these tapes and I kept thinking like, am I doing it right? Like, is it working? And like, I couldn't even feel my own feelings, like much less somebody else's like vibrations or anything like that. So I started with basically no awareness and just yeah, like slowly over time, it's just like come to this point, and I'm kind of still in shock about it. And from kind of reading more into this kind of stuff, my what I have come to understand is that basically all of us have these latent abilities within us, and the way
Mm-hmm.
they develop is based on the way your senses are tuned. So everybody processes things visual differently. So some people are more visual, some people are more kinesthetic, some people are more auditory. So depending on which way you're leaning is the way, like when your psychic abilities start to come online. That's the likely path that will take. So Megan here is much more visual, and I'm like super jealous of what she can do because it's like super cool. And there are people who have kind of broken this down in much more depth. I think there's like 5 or 6 types of extrasensory perception that you could have. There's clairvoyance, there's clairaudience, there's clairsentience, there's clair like something else. I forget what the other ones are.
There's a bunch. Like those,
Yep.
I think those are just the mainstream ones, and then there's like a bunch of sub ones beneath that
Mm,
as well.
yeah. Um, and I'm mentioning that simply as a way of potentially opening up that door for everybody listening to this, that perhaps you could see that as a possibility for the way your abilities could develop moving forward.
I was just thinking when you were telling your story about the door of possibility having opened up for you to move to Thailand and how big that was for you.
Mm,
And like those kinds of things, I think I hear stories about that stuff all the time. Like people have had these doors of possibility, maybe not through that lens, open up for them in such life-changing ways. And I was just kind of thinking back and scanning through my life about different times that I've had a door of possibility open. And one of the earliest ones I remember is I used to do classical piano,
mhm,
and all the other kids sucked. Like we had to do recitals, and they would always shit the bed. They'd start crying on stage. They would need their sheet music, and I remember watching this video at my piano teacher's house where she kind of showed one of the students who was like really good. And she's like, "Yeah, this is what I'd like of everyone, essentially."
mhm.
And I watched it, and that became the permission slip for me in order to embody that. Um, and so then I was like good at it.
Yeah, yeah,
Which
nice.
was kind of cool. And then even moving to Vancouver was a pretty big deal. I like left the province and moved to another province. Um, but I think also even bigger than that is I kept having this ping that I wanted to go to Mexico,
Hmm.
and I really wanted to go and just like eat fresh fish and like swim and stuff. Just like I just had this great desire to go. And all of a sudden, it's so out of the blue. I just kept visualizing myself going to Mexico, being in Mexico, but visualizing it without like a great level of attachment. I was just kind of chilling, but seeing it in my future and entertaining and playing with that thought. And a friend of mine just messaged me and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to Mexico in a month. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And the first thing that popped in my mind was like, I don't have the finances for that right now. And then I threw that out. I like released that. And then he's like, "Oh, I'll pay for everything." And I was like, "Well, I need like swimsuits and stuff. And my dog has to come." And so then it's so random. Most people don't like bring their dogs on vacation. But
Hmm.
everything just kind of ended up lining up with the airport. Everyone just like let me on with my dog, no questions asked. I had this great time hanging out in Mexico, and I actually had a synchronicity while I was there. The person I got my dog from, which was a whole door of possibility in and of itself, happened to be in Mexico on the street and calls out my dog's name. And I turned around. I was like, who the hell knows
What?
my dog in Mexico out of all places? Like, we're in Playa
Wow.
del Carmen. Turn around, and it's this guy that sold me the dog. And I was like, what the fuck? What are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I um am visiting. What are you doing here? And why is your dog here? It's like, I don't know. I just manifested this trip. And yeah, so that was a pretty big possibility with also synchronicities in it as well. But
Very cool. Very
yeah.
cool. Um, yeah, not just possibility in terms of the possibility of going to Mexico, but the possibility of like what's possible in terms of manifestation when you see these kinds of insane synchronicities happen, like
Exactly.
meeting that guy there.
Oh, and I also want to mention as well that
Yeah.
like the person that took me to Mexico was literally just like a loose friend. Like I didn't know
Hmm.
him that well. And it was nothing of like a romantic nature at all. It was like literally nothing happened. It was not,
Right.
he wasn't even trying to do anything, which I kind of also had a fear about. But as soon as I released it and I was like, if this is the universe's way and what is meant for me, then like none of those things will happen. I'm going to be completely safe. I'm going to feel great. It's going to be an awesome time and nobody will try any funny business. And then none of that happened.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I should also mention that exactly that is true for um I probably should have said that. I kind of glossed over that, but the way I came to Thailand the first time was I had been from like I dropped out of school at 16 to 20. I was basically like in my mom's basement trying to build my business so that I could travel. And during that time, I was reading this newsletter. There was this guy, I guess he's still around, Simon Black. He wrote a newsletter called Sovereign Man, and he would go to like 50 countries a year, and he would get boots on the ground, and he would like meet with business owners and bankers and politicians, and he would go to the black markets, and he would really get his finger on the pulse of what's going on in that country. And he would write these newsletters about, what's the best places to start a business, what's the best places to get a second passport, what's the best places, if you want to raise a family, and all of these topics. And I was just like devouring all of these newsletters because I was so fixed on the idea that like I wanted to travel, and I just wanted to make enough money from my internet business that I could be independent and travel. So this has been like a strong desire that had built up momentum over years at that point. And one day I was 19, almost 20, and I just get this message on Skype out of the blue from not even a current client, but like a former client. I hadn't talked to him in over a year, and just a message out of the blue, literally saying, "Hey man, want to go to Thailand?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm flying out my whole team to celebrate my birthday. Do you want to come? I'll pay for your ticket." Um, so it was really this like mindfuck moment of like, one moment I'm just like sitting in the basement, like doing my thing, and the next moment I'm like going to Thailand next week. And yeah, just like one of these life-changing moments that just came out of nowhere, just fell out of the sky. Um, Honestly, we could probably do the whole season of podcasts just talking about manifestation stories, because I got like a lot. We'll probably get to like a few of them as we
It's like a
as
whole lifetime worth.
yeah, basically. Um, so we are just about coming up on the hour, but as we're kind of starting to wrap up a little bit, I would invite the listener, if you're listening to this, first of all, I'd like you to think about and just notice how everything that's ever happened in your life started with a door of possibility being opened, whether it's the big major turning points or even to like the small micro moments. Let's say you went to the store yesterday to buy a can of soda. Well, guess what? You wouldn't have gone to the store if you didn't believe that was possible. So it's really one of those like critical things that everything hinges on. Um, when you were growing up, as you were deciding what you wanted to make of your life, you decided what could be possible based on what you saw around you, based on what your parents were doing, based on the things you were influenced by. Like in this current generation, I saw a stat recently that said something like 50 or 70% or some ridiculous number like that of high schoolers, they wanted to be influencers. Um, when I was in high school, that nobody was thinking they wanted to be an influencer. That um, but like think about your childhood dreams. At some point in your life, you probably had this massive vision for who you could be and who you could become. And then probably like life kicked you in the balls a couple times and made that seem less and less possible. Um, but I think with this time that we're moving into right now, like because of this like formlessness and inability to project past expectation onto the future, is like now is the time where all of those possibilities become available to you again. So yeah, think about how everything that's ever happened in your life started with the door of possibility being opened. And then from there, think about what might be possible for you from here. So both in terms of like who you could be and the things you can achieve and what's possible for you in terms of your external reality, but also in terms of the inner states, um, like peace, like power, like purpose, um, like creativity. Um, Something I've said to several clients is like, imagine if nothing on the exterior of your life changed, but just there was no more anxiety. Like, how much better would your life be if nothing changed, but you were peaceful? And it kind of makes them realize, well, that's what they wanted the whole time. They wanted all these things to be different so they could feel okay inside. But it's like, what if you could feel okay inside anyway? Um, that's like a possibility that a lot of people haven't considered. So both in terms of inner and outer reality, what could be possible from here? You might even consider the possibility that you have latent psychic abilities that have yet to be unlocked.
Yeah.
Which I'm pretty sure you do. And I wouldn't have said that 2 or 3 years ago, but now I'm like pretty damn sure, you know. What desires have you buried because you thought they were out of reach? Just a few things to ponder as you go about your day. And I want to finish off with, I guess you could call it a claim or a decree. And I will make a frequency attuned claim for everyone listening to this. And if you're listening to this and you agree to what is being said, all you have to say is yes. You just have to say yes to it. You can say, yes, I am willing. Yes, I agree. And that will actually cause that frequency to lock in with your field. And let's see, for the people who are here in the room, I might be able to feel it as this takes place. So I'll just say this, that on this day, I claim that all who hear these words will be brought to a new awareness of the possibilities that are available for them, and that all obstacles or blocks that have been standing in the way of those doors opening be made known to them, to be re-seen, re-known,
in order that they can be released. Word, I am word through this intention. Word, I am word. Oh, I felt that. And if you're listening again, all you have to do is say, yes, I agree. And depending on your level of sensitivity, you might be able to feel that frequency shift as well. But I certainly just felt something as I just said it. And I don't have time here to explain all the word I am word stuff, but maybe we'll save that for another time. So this was the door of possibility. There are 8 more doors that hopefully we'll have time to explore as we move forward. Megan, any closing thoughts or remarks before we wrap up? All right. Cool.
Nope.
So for those who are listening either on YouTube or like a podcast platform, there are actually people here in the room. We have a live audience for this. And if you'd like to join us in the live room for future episodes, you'll see in the description below the instructions for how to do that.
Oh, somebody put a heart. Thank you.
You got a heart.
I
Thank
like
you.
that.
Thank you, Shini. It was great to have you here. And I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Dal. All right. Thank you, everybody who was in the room with us today. Your presence here was felt, and it actually makes quite a significant difference for our ability to kind of bring these messages through. So I appreciate you being here, and thank you as well to all the other listeners. Dell says, I didn't know what to expect, but this was such a great listen. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that a whole lot. We'll try to keep them going. All right. So we're going to wrap up here, and hopefully we'll see you all again next time.
On our next one.